Whoa! Welcome back to another amazing episode of Reason, religiously educated atheists, secularists, and other non-theists. Welcome back. Tonight, we're going to do our usual thing. We got the new science this week. We're also going to be talking about the French terror attacks by ISIS. And we're going to wrap things up with the hypocrite of the week. But before we do any of that, let's introduce Dieter Lucum, the one with the voice that gets my panties moist.
I hate you so much. I just can't.
We also got
express
the
it.
Godless engineer, the technical guru that has transformed our show into a show worth watching. I'm telling you, man. If we could put your brain with my looks and Dieter's voice, we might just create the perfect human. Alright, but without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into some new science this week. Dieter.
Alright, so our new science actually aimed on my feed on Facebook today, so I thought this was just going to be kind of fun. I'm going to take you all back to the magical time of 150 years ago. Where was it? What year was that? 1859. We have records of what is called the Carrington event. Now, this is a time period where our technology was just kind of budding. We had very limited use of electricity, let alone actually functioning electronic devices. But that being said, a massive event occurred. People in the time had very little understanding what was going on, but what we are able to figure out now was that it was a gigantic solar storm, an incredible ejection of charged subatomic particles and other materials from the sun interacting with our magnetic field, ionosphere, the entire planet. And the issue with that is this just does the weirdest stuff to electronic devices. Sometimes it just supercharges them, having them all just burn out uselessly. Sometimes it just overcharges entire electrical systems, which happened at a separate, less intense, but still very bad event in Canada relatively recently. It actually overcharged their entire system, causing an enormous amount of damage. This was in 1989. People lost power. It was just awful. Millions without power for hours. If the same sort of event happened 150 years ago, today, we can only speculate the horrific amount of damage that would happen. And speculate we have. The National Space Weather Action Plan was developed by the White House's Natural Science Technology Council, and it is a strategic plan to prepare for the event of such a major solar storm. And we're on computers right now. Everyone that's watching this is on some kind of crazy electronic device. These could all get damaged. They could just break. They could just stop working temporarily. We don't exactly know. There's been some speculation that it would be like $1 to $2 trillion of damages in the first year alone. There could be cascading effects that last even longer. Every facet of our lives will be affected. And what makes this like, oh, well, that's terrible, but it happened in the past, right? Yeah, it's estimated that it will happen more or less every 150 years. And if you were checking your clocks, the first one happened in 1859. We're overdue.
Seems like we're overdue for a lot of things, but it's good to hear that they have a proactive plan for this, because as you know, like, climate change is a thing that's definitely going to affect us if we don't do anything about it. Now, obviously, it's not going to destroy the world tomorrow, but there are solar flares sometimes every week. I mean, they're happening around the clock, and most of them don't really affect us because they're not that powerful. But with these, we could have one tomorrow, and it could be like an EMP and knock out all electronics. You don't know how much you rely on electronics until they're gone. It's kind of like when your power goes out.
Okay, I'll get to that here in a second there, Alice, because I know exactly what it's like to be without power in North Alabama. But but so Dieter, you're basically telling me that the TV show Revolution is probably going to come to life, and they were most likely just preparing us for it.
I don't know what this
Illuminati.
show is, so I'm going to say yes.
Okay, well, in the TV show Revolution, basically it handles the event that all electronics, for some mysterious reason, stop working one day. Airplanes fall out of the sky, and just cats are mating with dogs. It's just pure hysteria, and so it just seems to me like the TV show Revolution was actually just some kind of propaganda piece, by the Illuminati to get us ready for this coming storm of solar emissions.
And once again, the Illuminati looking out for all of us.
Ah,
But
Listen,
the idea behind
if that happens,
is like
go ahead.
we're trying. There's a couple different organizations, the European Space Agency, among others, are trying to coordinate warning systems to kind of be like, hey, yeah, we're all gonna die. Prepare yourselves. But actually, that's not entirely accurate. What makes this so crazy is living things, from what I've read, will be more or less unaffected. Like, it depends on where you live and whatever, if things just fall out of the sky or if your pacemaker stops or something. But what really is affected is things that store power, more or less, as well as a bunch of smaller electronic components. So it's like, we're trying to figure out in some way that we could predict that this is going to happen so people can properly prepare themselves, sort of like earthquake detection. But it's like, these sort of events happen on a fairly regular basis, and they have much more diminished effects. I remember a while ago, there was one that was basically as, like, it would have been unbelievably destructive. I think at the time they just called it coronal mass ejection, and it just swooped right past where we would have been like a few months ago in like our yearly rotation around the sun. So dodged a colossal flaming bullet. But that's just the thing, is we're very lucky a lot of the time.
okay. Well, let's try.
These things could happen almost whenever. Sorry.
Okay.
Good.
No, that's fine. Each of us, let's try to predict what will the religious right say is the cause of this. Not coronal mass ejections. We all know that's propaganda by those people who think that the Earth is actually a sphere. Okay, what would the religious like what would they give us the answers? I mean, the real answers. I mean, you got to think about it. It's probably gay marriage. That's probably the reason why.
What's really freaking bad about this is literally burning judgment from above. Not actual judgment, obviously, but it's like flaming death from above.
Well,
this
yeah,
place
no.
In hand with some people's beliefs.
And if you consider the fact that religion pretty much started out as sun worship, because I mean that's all they knew, was that the sun was overhead and they needed the sun in order to survive. So I mean, it quite literally is like God is going to burn us alive, I guess, or at least burn our electronics alive.
I'm sure they'll pull a passage out of Revelation.
Someone's going to claim credit for this.
I'm sure they'll pull a page out of Revelation and use it to say that the end times are near.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been seeing signs all this time. I mean, you've got the red moon. That's happened a couple times, right?
Actually, on a regular basis, we can predict it.
No, it's not on a regular basis, okay? No, that means that God is going to unleash his judgment on us, okay, Dieter?
No.
I love how serious
I will not indulge this game.
One day, Dieter's going to be like, look, guys, I really just can't do this anymore. John is just too out there.
Yeah, someday.
Oh, man. But
that's all I really got for this. it's a big event. Hopefully we'll be able to have warning signs so we can properly prepare for it. It could be messy. But then again, it might not even happen in time because the sun is finicky.
Do you know, with our current technology, did you happen to find this out, how soon we're able to predict that a solar flare is going to occur?
It was almost like an add-on to the article, and it doesn't like it doesn't even think like there's that much time they could even do anything significant. What they hope to be able to do is like shut down relevant systems, like just effectively turn off all of our power plants, and hopefully they'll be perfectly fine afterwards.
Well, to answer a question in the comments already from Mr. Point Dave, he says, isn't it a 360 by 360 chance it even happens towards our planet and then only affect a portion of our planet? Well, I think that the type of coronal mass ejection that they are supposing here is like an all-engulfing kind of thing. Like, we're talking Fantastic Four out in space on the other side of the Earth. It's gonna turn them into superheroes, kind of coronal mass ejection.
I'm pretty sure we would be like, most of the planet would be fine, but it's one of those things where it's like, this could interfere with the like magnetic field of the Earth, perhaps, or it could also just send ridiculous auroras down. I think they described like they could the aurora borealis is like only visible in like northern Canada and then whatever the Antarctic version of it is, and during these sort of events you can see them as far down to Cuba. Like it covers a big portion. And it kind of energizes everything. I don't know all the physics behind it, but it's a significant thing that could happen. Someone says it estimates that these mega flares happening within the next decade is like 12% chance of it hitting us. That's a high enough percent for me to be a little bit antsy.
Yeah, I think that from what I was seeing, they haven't been able to predict any. From we had one that was it happened in our time, maybe a few years ago. It was pretty recent, but it wasn't like a really significant one. It only like knocked out a radio station, and that was like the only thing it did. It shut down a radio station for like an hour. But
I really gotta look. I gotta look up exactly what they do. Like I'm pretty sure it like oversaturates things that store energy with effectively extra energy. But that sounds so stupid. So I gotta figure out what these do.
And you did mention that it's not going to have much effect on life. Well, that's particularly dependent upon whether our magnetic field is disrupted, because that could happen. And basically everything that happens after all electronics are gone is going to affect life. So you're right in the fact that it won't affect life or living organisms as much as it will electronics. But you said you didn't see revolution. Basically, the world is going to go to shit with no power.
It might.
It will go to shit with no power.
Oh, actually, they can. It's possible they'll cause radiation poisoning to humans.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound fun.
All right, well, I guess we're going to move on from the new science this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to head into, are we headed into the terror attacks, GE?
Yep, we are.
So I know you guys saw what happened in France, in Paris. Now, I don't know how much evidence they've accumulated now, but as soon as the massacre occurred, their different sects of ISIS were leaving like celebratory Twitter messages and sending out all these tweets to people, thanking them for being involved and stuff like that. So immediately, like right after it happened, like less than 10 minutes after the attacks happened, there were already tweets popping up by ISIS. So even though at that time, I'm not sure if they had even subdued the terrorists yet, but they were already taking credit for it. So did they find what they were looking for? I mean, did they recover bodies and match them up with ISIS and do all those background checks and things like that? How was the investigation going?
No.
Hello? Jeter?
Oh, I actually have no idea.
Where'd GE go?
I have no idea.
So what are your thoughts on this attack then?
From the little that I've actually looked into it, because I have to, embarrassingly enough, I really didn't look that deeply into the attacks at all. I saw them as just like another example of humans just being horrible to each other.
Yeah.
I saw the lightest inkling that there's already a retaliation happening, but it was on the Daily Mail, and I don't put that much stock in Daily Mail. So I don't know. This could get very messy very quickly.
Well, yeah,
and
no, I've seen that Paris has already retaliated against ISIS. I don't think it was a Daily Mail. Yeah, there's one from Washington Post that I've got queued up. It says France launches fierce assault on ISIS targets in Syria in coordination with U.S. defense officials. And that was posted just a couple hours ago.
Well, that's exciting, I guess.
I'm with Dieter on this. I didn't really do too much investigation into it. I mean, yeah, it was kind of shocking that it happened, but what a lot of people don't realize, I mean, with this specific attack, because it happened in Paris, it's like much more visible. But people have to understand that these attacks are happening every day, sometimes multiple times a day, with far worse death counts and far more casualties. So to me, because I'm involved in looking at all of these different articles and killings and, you know, posting stuff about it on social media, it didn't really surprise me that much. I mean, what more can we expect from radical Islam at this point?
Well, see, that's just it. I don't think that we can expect anything more out of them. And, you know, to be quite honest, I think that, you know, more moderate Muslims or more of the non-extremist Muslims need to be taking, you know, an active stance against them. But I'm kind of curious as to why they're not, other than maybe they're scared. Like, maybe they're scared of you know, mortal retaliation against them. Or if they don't want to because it's like, well, they're using our book. It's the same book. It's just, we disagree with them.
Yeah, that's the thing. I posted this quote of mine last night on Instagram that says, when moderates call radical believers extremists, what they really mean is that the extremists adhere to their religion much more strictly than the moderates do. The moderates can't be outraged or speak against it, or else they demonstrate their own hypocrisy. But their silence inadvertently supports the extremism and allows the radicalism to continue. That's basically the problem, is that the very first thing that happened, I noticed on my Instagram when I first found out about the attacks and I was posting things about it. Here came the Muslim apologists, like already. And they're saying things like, those aren't real Muslims, like these people are taking it out of context. You know, I got it all. Like, one of the reporters had said something like, this is the type of thing we equate with radical Islam. And one of my followers got upset about that and was like, well, why do you equate that with radical Islam? Well, because that's what radical Islam does. You know, Boko Haram going to the neighboring city and murdering 4,000 women and children. You know, this is what we've come to expect out of Islam in the modern world. And my personal opinion on it is, if you don't like that, then you should probably do something to change it. Because regardless of what you say, they are Muslims. They are doing it in the name of Islam, and they have scriptures to back them up from the Quran and the Hadiths. And it shouldn't surprise you that much, because Muhammad was a misogynistic barbarian that tortured, enslaved, and murdered people. And when the Quran says to emulate the prophet, what else can they do? I mean, they're doing what their religion tells them to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why I asked the question like I did, was that, well, what's their motivation? Like, those that see themselves as being apart from the type of Islam, that ISIS seems to employ, why aren't they speaking up against? Like, I know that you get the Islamist apologists on your videos and whatnot, but saying, oh, they're not real Islamists, that's just, like, I think you might have said that, that's just a no true Scotsman. I mean, you can't say that they're not practicing the faith. I mean, unless they're coming at you with, like, verses that just don't exist in their dogma, you can't say that they're not employing the same religion as you. I mean, if you don't want your religion to be so open and inclusive to interpretation, as a lot of religions like them to make, them, then you should create your own religion and be like, nope, this is the official religion. This is how it's officially taught. Here are our teaching materials. There you go. Kind of thing. I mean, it just seems like they're being lazy about how people are employing the actual faith. But let's see. On this CNN article, says, on a night when thousands of Paris residents and tourists were reveling and fans were enjoying a soccer match between France and world champion Germany, horror struck in an unprecedented manner. Terrorists, some with AK-47s, some reportedly with bombs strapped to them, attacked sites throughout the French capital and at the stadium where the soccer match was underway. ISIS claims responsibility for Paris attacks. Now, there was some commenting in the stream here about how there's nothing conclusive exactly just yet, that apparently there was a passport that was found next to a suicide bomber, but there's nothing like official that connects these people to ISIS, just that ISIS is like, yeah, we did this, is apparently where it stands right now. But there's no question whether or not this was motivated by, their extremist beliefs. Scores were killed.
You see, I don't know if we can necessarily say that. I'll keep going. I'm always in the position that you shouldn't ever completely ignore the motivations that can come from someone's deeply held beliefs, but at the same time, you can't 100% blame them, because obviously there are political issues. Obviously, there's a ridiculous history between France and Muslim countries, apparently. And I don't know everything about the subject. I don't know everything about their relationship, but I'm uncomfortable saying that we can just go, Islam, they're Muslim, therefore we know everything. We know all of their motivations.
Well, no. I didn't mean like Islam was their motivation. I said extremist beliefs, and I feel like that's kind of a general term. And I mean, extremist beliefs. I mean, Christians hold extremist beliefs. There are Christian terrorists. There are plenty of Christian groups that commit homegrown terrorism, on our own soil, and so that's what I meant. Just the extremist beliefs that cause you. Not necessarily cause people, but are indicative of people that want to do these kind of things.
Right. I mean, we never jump to conclusions. Right. Like, even though ISIS was taking credit for it, what I said on my social media is I'm still waiting to see who the terrorists actually are. Just because ISIS is taking credit for it doesn't mean that they actually did it, because they're just trying to rile people up. I mean, they're doing that with everything. If you pay attention to their social media at all, they're doing this with all sorts of stuff. But we shouldn't be surprised that this attack, whether it was by radical Islam, radical Muslims or not, is being equated with radical Islam. Because when you think of radical people that are performing terrorist attacks, the majority of terrorist attacks are by radical Muslims on other Muslims. So that's why it's being equated. Just to kind of clear that up.
Well, I mean, you mean by sheer numbers or percentage of
the percentage
terrorist
of
attacks by
attacks?
Muslims?
The percentage of terrorist attacks.
I don't know, because I saw like articles that are making the claim that they're actually a minority, just by the numbers at least.
I'd have to see that, but with the Pew Research polls that I've seen, they said the majority of terrorist attacks are by Muslims on other Muslims. So even Muslims attacking like another country, like Paris, for example, is like a minority attack. It doesn't usually happen. It's usually Muslims on Muslims. Now, if you look at different statistics like the terrorist attacks that actually occur in our country, then yeah, it's going to be different. But worldwide, it's Muslim on Muslim.
Slightly embarrassed. A lot of this, I just have to like claim ignorance or just have a subtle comment here or there. Oh well.
Apparently, last month, for the month of October, there were 195 jihad attacks, and 1,500 people were killed. So, as I was saying, just because we're equating, let me reiterate that, just because we're equating these terrorist attacks with radical Islam doesn't mean we think that Muslims did it. Obviously, we don't know, and we don't know their motivation. Even if they were radical Muslims, that doesn't mean that they killed because of the religion. It's highly likely that that's the case, but I'm of the mind that we should wait until we have more information to make that assessment.
Well, yeah, but you got to understand, it's really hard not to jump the gun and say that, yeah, it was Muslim radicals, it was Islamic radicals that did it, because, I mean, you've got reports of people hearing Allahu Akbar, as the attack was happening. You've got people that are dropping passports from Syria and whatnot. So, I mean, I was going to pose this question to you guys. Knowing the nature of any religion, like how it's rooted back in, 0 AD, basically. I know Islam is a bit newer than that, but knowing that these religions originated in such barbaric times, as indicated by their actual dogma, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that religion is a cause for their violent actions, but I think that it's an easy scapegoat. I think that it's an easy shield for them to hide behind in order for them to carry out their less violent actions, like, building an army and all this other stuff. Some of the more less violent actions. I think that it kind of gives them an out and allows them to hide under it. Whether or not they believe in it or whatever, I think that, they could easily be Christians, I mean, using the Bible with some choice verses and choice set of interpretations. So I'm not saying that religion is wholly to blame here, but I think religion is an indicator of such extremist beliefs and possibly, like people that are prone to do violence are drawn to these religions. Does that make sense?
Well, I always get through this by saying that religion can be a cause, but almost always religion is the vehicle being used to carry out these things. So while I'm saying we should withhold judgment until we have further information, there's no doubt in my mind that if they were Muslims, it's highly likely, it's extremely likely that they were doing it because the religion told them to do it.
Well, no, I think that it's somebody that is using religion in order to convince people to do it, or they have those tendencies already, like they have this tendency to want to kill other people beforehand. But I also subscribe to the idea that good people will do good things, bad people will do bad things, but to get good people to do bad things, it takes religion. So I do think that there's a small percentage of religious people that wouldn't be, suicide bombing or carrying out these terrorist attacks if, they didn't have religion, if they weren't brainwashed.
I agree with that. And I think that, Sam Harris is probably one of the best people, him and Ayaan Hirsi Ali, when it comes to criticizing Islam. But it is, as they say, the motherlode of bad ideas. Christianity has evolved throughout the ages to be what we consider Christians now aren't really what you would think of in like the 15th or 16th century. But this is the problem, is that Islam is still in the Bronze Age. They're not evolving. And the people that are evolving are the minority, because when all of these polls show that you should kill someone for criticizing the religion, or kill someone for drawing a cartoon of Muhammad, or honor killings, those are supported by the majority in Muslim countries. So like one of the memes says, when Muslims are the minority, they're the sheep. When they have equality, they're the fox. But when they're the majority, they're the wolves. I mean, that just really nails it.
Well, the one
We're still stuck in the Bronze Age with Islam.
Like 7 things. First off, if you hear me say yes or something in the background, I'm calibrating a testing rig, so I will succeed and fail occasionally. So don't mind my mumbling. But anyway, Islam is the younger of like the Abrahamic religions, and it's gone through a bunch of different cycles. Radicalism in the Middle East, for a million different reasons, started rising relatively recently. Like we've all seen the pictures of like, this is what Islam used to be like, this is what these countries used to have, and then suddenly everyone's being repressed. There was a lot of very significant wars that happened in that area that kind of decimated their civilization, for lack of better phrasing. It's been rebuilding tremendously since then. But in times of devastation, often radicalism is something that can get a foothold because it provides order. And when radicalism, especially when it's based off of a religion, tends to take some very hard and fast rules that are non-negotiable, that are easy to implement. And I think that's why the more radical version of Islam has become the mainstay, at least in recent years, because it's still in that area is still relatively in a recovery period. This is coming from someone who has a very lackluster understanding of world history, but I don't think it's entirely fair. I say this because I don't think it's entirely fair to just say, well, Islam is just still in the Bronze Age. All the religions are still in the Bronze Age. It's just how we decided to interpret them given that religion's current or relatively current history.
Well, here's the thing, though. If you think about, let's just say like around the year 1000, like Islam, there was actually an age called the Islamic Golden Age, where they basically, were the pioneers of math and science. And they were doing fantastically well. I mean, most of the things that you think of, like algebra, most of the star names, all of those things can be attributed to Muslims in the Middle East. I mean, they were thriving in math and science. So to say that they're in a recovery period is true, but to say that it's always been war or it's always been unrest there is not necessarily true. At one point, they had it really great. It had been said that if the Nobel Prize existed in the year 1000, it would have went exclusively to Muslims.
But that's the deal. Is like, when I say relatively recently, I mean the past 100 years.
Well, I mean, other than that golden age before they took the religion and tried to control people. I mean, if you think about that area, the Middle East, and all the cities that were there, I mean, they were doing pretty phenomenally well. And with the exception of that one time period, the Middle East has just been a ticking time bomb for most of history. I mean, they've probably been at war for, I'd go out on a limb and say like 80% of the time people have been there.
Well, apparently my headset just died, so I didn't hear half of what you just said. So that means I disagree with you.
Oh, that's okay. We were going to disagree anyway. Like we always do.
I know before the show, I kind of asked you, Ayla, to bring up some good Quran verses that might support such actions that they took tonight, because of how you were talking about Islamist apologists coming on and saying, hey, they weren't real Islamists or real Muslims. I think it would be good to have some some quotes from the Quran on hand to be like, yeah, but what about this verse? And of course they're going to come back with more apologetics, but
All right, well, this is what I think is that when you run into these Muslim apologists, what they always throw at you is that first they try to hit you with the context, like, oh, you're taking that out of context and this is happening. Or they hit you with but Muhammad was a person who helped orphans and did all of these things, and he was great. And Islam is actually a religion of peace. Well, as far as that goes, if you know anything about history and Muhammad actually wasn't that great. He had really great generals that probably, I think some of them never even lost a battle. So that was where his success came from. He had great generals, one of the greatest generals of all time. And maybe it's true that early in his life he did help orphans and liberate women and things like that. But from what we have, the sources that we have, he was a pretty horrible guy who took sex slaves, who married a little girl who was a pedophile. It's just crazy, all the things he did. I mean, there was one battle where I was reading about where he beheaded people who surrendered and threw them into a hole. So, I mean, he was a really fucking terrible guy. So one of the verses that I would say is probably a pretty good one is from Quran 48 and 29, which is, Muhammad is Allah's apostle. Those who follow him are harsh to the unbelievers, but merciful to one another. And this is kind of drawing out my point, is that the Quran, the Hadiths, and the history should be all you need to dismiss this nonsense. Because the Quran's basic teaching is that you should emulate the Prophet. And you get a lot of information about him from some historians, but mostly from the Hadiths. Now, a lot of Muslims will try to dismiss the Hadiths and say that's not really a part of it. Well, that's just apologetics and they're making excuses. Basically, if you were to go read the Quran right now and highlight a verse that was violent, misogynistic, cruel, talked about slavery, basically all of the horrible things that we think are completely immoral, you'd end up with a very highlighted book.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see what you guys think about this one. This is, I've got a few images on my page that I've done where I kind of summarize in my own special little way the Quranic passage. This is Quran 230. I want to read my summary, and then we can look at the actual text. Because a lot of people are like, oh, it's not real, what he's spouting here. According to the Quran, Allah will shed human blood while angels praise him in heaven. When asked why he has to kill people, Allah explains that they are stupid and don't know everything like he does.
Yeah.
Well.
Now that's
context.
That's me summarizing what the passage literally says. Of course, you're going to get people that are hold on. You're going to get people that are going to come at you like, oh, well, that's out of context, or, hey, that's not right, you're not reading it correctly. But here, 230. All right, I'm reading off of skepticsannotatedbible.com, which they do have Book of Mormon and the Quran there as well. And when thy Lord said unto the angels, Lo, I am about to place a viceroy in the earth, they said, Wilt thou place therein one who will do harm therein, and will shed blood, while we hymn thy praise and sanctify thee? He said, Surely I know that which ye know not. Okay, so to explain my translation here, according to the Quran, Allah will shed human blood while angels praise him in heaven. That's that first part. I mean, honestly, if you create somebody that is going to go and kill a bunch of people, aren't you basically using that person as a weapon to kill other people?
Yes.
Okay. So there's that. And then when asked...
Oh, but that's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor?
Yeah.
How is it a metaphor?
You got to take it in a spiritual context.
Oh, the spiritual context.
Of course, it's a spiritual context.
But then the last part there, Allah explains that they are stupid and don't know everything like He does. That's, surely I know that which ye do not know, or ye know not. And, I mean, that's basically what it says. It's like, no, you're stupid. I know everything. So, I know more than you.
I sent you one if you want to put that one up in the messenger. One of my best memes. One of my best memes on Islam. Okay. But there's all sorts of crazy stuff in there, man. Like, let me see. Quran 8 and 12. I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. Therefore, strike off their heads and strike off every fingertip of them. I mean, like, come on. Like, it doesn't get much clearer than that. That cannot, I mean, how do you take that metaphorically, or how do you take that in a spiritual context? Cut off the heads of unbelievers and strike off their fingertips too.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you got it posted up there? I'll go ahead and read it.
Allah thinks women are only for sex. Al-Barak 2:223. In the majority of hell's inhabitants are women. Uh-oh, women. You're going to be going to hell no matter what. Sharapukurai, Volume 128. Allah also sends the wives of men who did wrong to hell. Surat as Safat. Surat as Fat. 37:22 through 23. Because women are bad omens. Harmful to men, and minds are deficient. And their minds are deficient. Wow. They just gotta they love women in that religion, don't they?
Oh, they absolutely do. And I actually made this meme in response to some Muslims that were criticizing me, saying that Islam is for the liberation of women and Islam is for women's freedom of expression. So this meme, I also did a video that accompanied it called Is Islam Misogynistic? But basically, there's no denying this. Any sane, rational person that reads this book is going to be disgusted. If you read the book, it's going to disgust you. If you read the hadiths and learn about Muhammad's life from the credible historic sources that we have, you're going to be disgusted. Okay? And there's no way that you can call this religion the religion of peace. You can't call any religion the religion of peace if its fundamental values incite everything except peace. You can't say it's a religion of peace if it's telling you to strike off the heads of unbelievers, cut off their fingertips. But it gets better, If you want to, you can allow non-believers or believers of other religions to pay a jizya, which is a tax that you pay to Muslims. That doesn't even guarantee they're going to spare you. It just means, hey, we're trying to be a religion of peace, so we'll let you have these beliefs, but you have to pay us, which is basically a subtle acknowledgement that our religion is the true one. That's why you're paying us.
Okay, so here's one particular verse. I have the original text pulled up, too. According to the Quran, it is pointless to warn those that aren't Muslim. Allah has made it impossible for them to convert to Islam because He needs torture victims. The last part is a little bit literal on my end. I understand that, but the actual verse says, "As for
No,
disbelievers,
that's what it says.
yeah, as for the disbelievers, whether thou warn them or thou warn them not, it is all one for them. They believe not. Allah hath sealed their hearts and sealed their hearing and their hearts, and on their eyes there is covering. Theirs will be an awful doom." It just seems to me like he wants to have torture victims, and so he makes certain people so that they can't convert.
Right, their hearts are sealed. This is basically predestination in action. And this is the thing that pisses me off when I'm talking to a lot of Muslims and Christians, is that they seem to think that the evil of the world is due to free will. Meanwhile, their religion doesn't even teach free will. It teaches predestination. There is no free will. Allah has sealed their hearts from the beginning of time so that he can torture them in hell. That's basically what that verse says. And it's no different from the verses in the Bible that say the same exact shit.
Exactly. That's
this is some horrific. This is horrific that you believe in a God that would create people with the sole purpose to be tortured with unending agony for all time.
Yeah, and Kim, she actually in the comments there pointed it out, saying that many Christians also draw parallels to a husband's passage to heaven and a wife's moral standing. The Quran and Bible are slight variations of the same hero story. Well, yeah, because they're both Abrahamic religions. They both, feed off of those Abrahamic faith, and that's how. That's pretty much how it was built. They used the Abrahamic faith as a template, and then they just built their own version.
Peter, what do you think about these verses we're bringing up? We know you don't know a lot about Islam, but what do you think about this?
It's unsurprising, but at the same time, I have the same view of the Bible that I do know probably about a lot more about. Is of course you're going to find a lot of ridiculously horrific and violent and tragic and just ridiculous quotations from any of these books, because they're written in a very violent time period, a very ignorant time period, and in the exact same way, someone else could open the book and then read a million, or not a million, but like dozens of incredibly uplifting, incredibly humanitarian, even strikingly modern moral passages. So it is kind of one of those like, I was just reading this article like as we're talking, and it's like, I think Reza Aslan, is that how you pronounce his name? He said it's of his opinion that religions are neither peaceful nor violent. What you bring into it is what you're going to get out of it, and it depends on the community. It depends on their values. I agree, but completely disagree. I think these religions are both violent and peaceful. Well, you can use them. You can use them to motivate whatever the hell you want, because they are very diverse and very long.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a little disingenuous to say that a religion can't be violent, because it obviously is. I mean, when you have a book that is regarded as, these two books are, the Quran and the Bible, I mean, you really have to take stock in what it says. I mean, you have to take it, because, like, if you're going to sit there and tell me this is God's word, this is the word that God spoke out of his mouth, and he got some fire or something, and he wrote on a piece of leather that, don't do this shit, but I'm going to forget about, don't molest kids or don't fuck kids. If you're seriously going to say that God wrote this book or these are God's words, then I'm going to be hypercritical of you, like, compared to our current social environment. And these books, these dogmas are obviously so out of date that they can't survive in current society without them changing, but also not changing at the same time.
Well, the thing is this, is that, speaking specifically about the Bible and the Quran here, the fundamentals are so violent and barbaric. I mean, we've got slavery, we've got killing, genocide, the subjugation of women. And
one of the pillars is also charity.
That's true, but the thing you notice is the more moral the Christian or the Muslim is, the less they actually adhere to the religion. That's what you generally find. And the reason, and it doesn't matter if you do good or not, the fact that the prescription is there to do these things is enough to cast it aside. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only goal, because, I mean, obviously, take Christianity in America here, for example. They're not chopping off heads for the most part. They are doing things in the legal system to prevent people from having rights and other things like that. But I think what we're generally seeing here is a more progressive attitude as we slowly drag them kicking and screaming into the proper century. It just doesn't seem like that's happening with Islam, and that's why it tends to be a little more criticized. We make fun of Christianity a lot more because that's actually the religion that we have to deal with. I mean, this whole Starbucks cup thing went viral. But when it comes down to harsh criticisms, because we don't actually have that level of beheadings and we don't have Muslim terrorist attacks on a large scale here in America, that's why we don't criticize it the same way. But I think that we need to continue to criticize it, and it really disappoints me that our fellow liberals, our fellow progressives, fail to criticize Islam and they defend it, and that is the saddest shit I've ever seen in my life. And if you need me to say a name, I'll throw a name out there too. I love the guy on some issues. I like his videos. I'm subscribed to his channel. But when it comes down to Islam, Steve Shives just has it wrong.
Yeah,
I think
you can't call yourself progressive and defend this shit. It's the opposite of progressive.
I think it is incredibly disingenuous to, in the same way with Christianity, to just say like, no, this is not part of the religion. It's like, no, it is part of the religion. It's not the only part. Obviously, it's not the only part, but you have to reconcile that it is part of the religion as well. And I think we have to do that with every single idea, let alone ideas that we think are sacred. Take the entirety.
I agree, and it's how, like, the Westboro Baptist Church gets away with being so radical in a land of Christian moderates, because any Christian that tries to call them out, they just hold up the Bible and say, hey, look, it says it right here. You think this is God's word, right? Right? All right, now shut up and listen to us. And that's how it goes.
It's a great, like, I've seen a lot of people bring up the idea about, like, actually exactly the Westboro Baptist Church. Like, ISIS is the Westboro Baptist Church of Islam. And I would kind of be like, all right, yeah, I agree with you. But they're still representing part of the religion. And we need to discuss that.
Oh, here comes the the menstruation meme.
Yeah, do you want to read it?
You go ahead.
Okay. Menstruation is an abomination. It makes Allah queasy when he thinks of his cleanly men having sex with a woman on her period. Don't you do it, or else.
Obviously, I was paraphrasing.
I mean, isn't that just up to the couple?
Obviously, I was paraphrasing, but that's basically what it says. I mean, most, well, not most, but the Abrahamic religions at least frown upon menstruation.
I'm not really sure why. I mean, is it just like the mild cleanliness issue?
Well, I've heard from some apologists that, and this is their excuse for this, is that when you're living in a desert and you don't have access to running water, one of the most unclean things you can do is come into contact with blood. To me, it still sounds like a terrible excuse. I mean, if I was God, I would have just said, look, motherfuckers, you're living in a desert, okay? Just don't be getting blood on you. If you do, wash your hands. That doesn't mean you know women are an abomination or women are less than men, or don't take this the wrong way. There's so many better ways you could have said it than simply saying menstruation is an abomination.
this is also one of those instances that this happens all the time in the Bible, where it's just like, obviously they had to do it this way, because this was a people that were like, holy shit, if you come into like, just assuming that is the actual rationale, it would just be like, yeah, coming into contact with blood when you're in the desert, bad idea. Infections could spread. I guess washing is something you can't do as often. It's like, just in general, it's a pretty lousy idea. But since they had no idea why this was a bad idea, they just connected the dots. They just had to come up with whatever explanation they could, and then have some way to enforce it. Because in this time period, keeping people in order and keeping them alive was way more important than figuring anything out.
Right, but I mean, and here's the thing too. Like, okay, so if you believe like that is the real reason, why don't we have an updated version of this shit? You know, why are we still following a book from 2,000 years ago when so many things have changed? You know, what is your God's? Is your God so, you know, so terrible of a God that he can't give you updated instructions? How hard is it to say in your book that women are equal to men? Treat them as such. Like, come on, man.
Well, no, somebody in the comment section said that the menstruation thing is more about fertility than anything else. So I'm really unsure about the fertility thing. That's why I didn't say anything about it. Hold
well, on, you are still fertile during that time. Well,
I don't know what they meant by that.
You can still get pregnant if you have sex during that period. Just warning.
I don't know what they meant by that, but I was just giving an example of one of the excuses given to me by an apologist. It was actually he commented on this meme when I posted it. But that's the thing, you know, you have theology and you have apologetics. Theology is attempting to make sense of things that you really can't make sense of, like this meme, for example. And then you have apologetics, which makes excuses for an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, and what's the other one? Omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, omnipresent. Omnipresent God. You're making excuses for this God. No excuse can be made for any deity with those attributes. There is no excuse. Omnibenevolence and omnipotence would put any excuse to rest. So basically what you have is a failed answer to the problem. We still have the problem.
I think it's one of those issues that just, like, I'm always way more comfortable just having the conversation with people, not even, like, assuming that God isn't even in the picture, and just kind of figuring out why these people wrote this book at all. And it seems like everything has a good, gigantic quotation marks, reason, also gigantic quotation marks, for pretty much everything written in these books. Like, there was a progression of thinking for everything that was put into it. And some of it's just hilarious. Some of it makes some sense. A lot of it has to do with control. A lot of it has to do with just blaming anyone for any problem conceivable, as long as it's not the people in charge of the community. So I honestly don't care about these characteristics of the God. I just want to know why this book was written and why people still believe it.
Well, I mean, people still believe it because it's a great source of control. I mean, it's got the perfect recipe for it in there. I mean, it helps you control the population. It helps them, it helps those in power get the people to do what they want. I mean, it just all around, it's a perfect, like, manual for, hey, if you want to control a whole bunch of people, well, here you go.
I mean, truly, that's really what it is. If you think about the Bible, for example, and if you know the history of Christianity and its roots, you know that these scriptures were mostly written, especially the New Testament, were written for people who were like lower class. They were slaves. They were constantly being, ruled harshly by the richer people. And so what it does is it teaches that those things are a blessing. You know, being beat by your master is a blessing. Continue to obey him like you would obey Christ. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. You know, pay your taxes. Like, you know, just listen to what your master says and give everything you have to the poor. It kind of centered on the type of lifestyle that people were living then and who Christians really were at that time the New Testament was written. And I think that really does play into it a lot, what was going on at the time. But what you see, though, you see a different thing with Christianity than you do with Islam. With Islam, you still got them doing the exact same things that Muhammad was doing when he was running around in the Middle East. With Christianity, they've totally perverted that idea of poverty and submission, and now they've replaced it with the Republican Party. You know, don't sell everything you have and give it to the poor. You're a capitalist. Get out there and make some money. Talk trash about those poor people. If they really wanted to do well, they would get a job and work.
And don't forget, your ass is persecuted. Always say that. Your ass, find something. It doesn't matter how minute it is. It could be a cup at Starbucks. It don't matter.
It's persecution.
Of course it is. I mean, have you not seen? I've got this one Vine. It's pretty awesome. I'm standing in Walmart and I've got my camera up. I'm like, I cannot believe how much we are persecuted in this nation as a Christian. But then there's a whole bunch of Jesus candles behind me being sold at Walmart. Not a one of them was flying spaghetti monsters. So you know that we're persecuted, the Christians. Yep.
And the thing is, like, you know, Dieter mentioned earlier, there are good things in these books. You know, like you said, one of the pillars is charity. For Christianity, for example, I think one of the most beautiful things in the Bible is Paul describing love. You know, love is patient, love is kind. That whole passage to me was fantastic. But it obviously, the God is not showing that level of love. You know, and like Stark Raven Kane is saying in the comments, the best of the Bible, or the Quran, isn't worth taking it all on. And that's really what separates moderates from extremists, is that the moderates, you know, here in our country we have Christian moderates who, like 82% of them, I think in a poll, show that they only read the Bible during church. So basically what that means is that 82% of those people that they polled only are hearing what the pastor wants them to hear about the Bible. They never read it outside of church. So they don't know about this bad stuff that's in there. And you're right, it's not worth taking it all on. But one of the things that I like to do is expose what the book actually says. That's pretty much what I'm doing on my channel right now with the Bible. I want people to know that the Bible is not pro-life. And I want people to know that the Bible teaches all of these hard things, and how basically what Christianity is today is a perversion of what it was intended to be. And the sooner that we're able to draw these parallels from what it was made to be and what people are taking it as, maybe we can get these people to let go of their religion. I have a co-worker who I've shared some of my videos with, and she's been, I don't know, she's kind of sitting on the fence now about it all, because she was a Christian who went to church every Sunday, but she's never read the Bible at all. She doesn't even pull out a Bible when they ask, you know, turn your Bibles to 1 Corinthians, whatever. She doesn't even do that. She told me she's never read it, but she's a Christian. And so I'm exposing her to these verses in the Bible, and she's reading them for herself and seeing what it is. And I think that that's one of the best ways. You know, you can deal with these apologists all day long if you want to, but I don't really waste my time on them, because if they're already making excuses for the passage, chances are they've read the book, they've read the passages with a different mindset. So they're already going to be making excuses for it. So those aren't the people. You're not going to convert those people. You're not going to be able to talk reasonably to these people. It's the other people that you really need to reach, the fence sitters. And you have to do it in a casual manner, not attacking them or their beliefs. You just got to present it well. I think that's really what we have to do as atheists. Because if you really want the religion gone, if you really want people to take a stand against it, and there are secular Christians, so I know that there are secular Muslims. If you really want that, we got to find these people, and we got to draw them out. That's the key to changing the world.
Yeah, that's
I think
actually a good thing that you brought that. I'm sorry, Dieter. You go ahead.
yeah, it was just to go to your original point. Uh, yeah, like what, 5 minutes ago. There was, I think Matt Dillahunty said it. There's no positive thing that you can draw from a religion that cannot be derived from a secular source. But to add on to that, there's no like negative thing from a religion that you couldn't also get from some other fanatical faith-based sort of belief system. So I don't see the exact point of trying to just say like, oh, this religion promotes this thing, religion promotes charity, it promotes like love and all these other things. When it's like, okay, you don't need the religious baggage for that. And but the issue with that, like the issue with that is the baggage is the same kind of baggage you would get from like hyper nationalism or something. It's one of those things where it's just, if it's an uncritically analyzed set of beliefs that can lead to really bad outcomes.
I'm sorry, I gotta address this. Yeah, I get you. So Kim in the comment section says, I'm trying to start a Bible study at my uni, that I'm guessing that means Unitarian Church, is open to Christian and atheists, front to back. However, only atheists have responded with willingness. All Christians see it as a trick by Satan. Because funny how actually reading the Bible is a trick by Satan.
You see that trick of Satan you guys keep quoting? That's what we in the unreligious communities call doubt. You are doubting your beliefs. That is not a bad thing. That means you have to now start investigating. That will remove your doubt. Or at the very least, it'll put it in proper context.
Yeah, but you know our brains are not equipped to make us want to investigate for the most part. We actually have to...
I disagree. I think you have to be trained not to want to investigate things.
Well, I can make the argument that we are. I can make the argument that we are trained not to through indoctrination. But the point I'm trying to make here is that any brief study of psychology that will show you that your brain operates on a myriad of psychological biases, many things that will allow you and actually make you think irrationally. So I think that you have to make a constant conscious decision to always go beyond that. I'm always thinking about what I think about a specific topic. So if we're talking about something, I'll revisit that topic over and over and over. It's not just, as how we did when we were religious. When we were religious, we form an opinion on something like abortion. All right, it's wrong. It should be illegal. And then that's it. It's never revisited. I always doubt what I think, and I always revisit. And as you said, it's doubt. The doubt is the key. And that's what we have to get people to do. We have to get them to not always want to get that whole status quo bias thing going. Let's keep things like it is, and let's never change it. We've got to constantly doubt what we think. And I always revisit, like, my position for, I mentioned abortion. Yes. I always revisit it.
Yes, your doubt is very special. But,
it's like your voice.
No, my voice is useful. Now, anyway, sorry to keep rolling back to this topic, but I really want to figure out exactly what I'm trying to say. It seems to me that like the religious belief system, or any religious belief system, since it can simultaneously motivate fanaticism as well as like loving, et cetera, kind of emotions, does that mean that there's really nothing special about religion at all? It's just kind of a manifestation of like our ability to convince ourselves of various things. Because like I said previously, there's no positive thing that can come from a religion that you can't get from a secular source. But after saying that, I kind of jumbled like crazy. I don't think there's really any negative thing that can come from it that can also not come from a secular source.
That's true.
It seems just religion is just a really good thing that we can all talk about because we're all more or less familiar with the phenomenon. So I think that's a good go-to thing for like conversations about skepticism or about just any kind of rational discourse or irrational discourse given the subject matter. So yeah, religion's not special is what I kind of got from my own meandering.
I know that the Prototype Atheist has a good video about this. You know, we're sorry that he hasn't been able to rejoin us yet, but I think the video is called Religion, Humanity's First Attempt at Science. And a lot of people get offended by that title, but I think it's true. I think that, you know, we didn't have the scientific method then when they were making these religions, and these people were trying to understand the world and describe it in a way that was relevant to them. So in a way, the key word here is attempt. It was the first attempt at science. But, you know, we have science now, and I think, you know, as a lot of times atheists are accused of only promoting science, which I don't ever see that as a bad thing, but I think that we should rely on that. We should rely on the scientific method. It's one of the things that assists us with our doubts. I think I'm probably more focused when I talk to people, like actual reasonable people, the religious folks that you can talk with. I'm actually more interested in talking to them about their views on science. Like, or am I talking to someone who thinks that the world was created 6,000 years ago? Yes? Or are they 100% certain about that? Okay, conversation over. If it's somebody who might see some evidence and start to doubt, that's the type of person that I want to talk to. I want to talk to them and promote the current knowledge that we have due to science. And let's talk about religion. Because usually you don't talk about politics or religion with the friends you intend to keep, right?
Yeah. Do we want to have any final thoughts on the French terror attacks before we move on to Hypocrite of the Week?
Yeah, well, let's just do a roundabout. Like, everyone give the last words.
All right, Dieter, you start.
All right. Well, like I said in the beginning, and I will reiterate 100 times if I need to, I did not do much research on this, and I am insultingly unschooled on the religion of Islam. But that being said, and actually especially because of that, probably, I think that this is definitely a complicated issue. Religion probably has some kind of maybe motivating factor or possibly just a scapegoating rationalization to it. But there's also conflicts between the two countries or the series of countries, as well as organizations in various countries. The entire subject is complicated. And what I really hope happens is that before any significant retaliation takes place, other than the retaliation that's already taken place, that we can definitely figure out who was responsible and have them take the responsibility for it, as opposed to just wild attacks on people that had nothing to do with the situation, going into full-scale wars, etc., etc. The attacks themselves were horrible. Heart goes out to their families, of course, of all of the various victims. And I really hope the people that are responsible for this can't hurt anyone else anymore. That is as neutral a position as I think I'm capable of making. Next person.
All right. Well, for me personally, I think that there is enough evidence to say that it was a terrorist attack carried out by ISIS. Whether or not it's like carried out by ISIS, the main group, or maybe like a fringe offset or something like that. Like maybe ISIS core didn't know what ISIS fringe left wing or left right, group was gonna do or something like that. But it's pretty much just like, oh hey, go out, create terror. I think that it is safe to say that radical Islam was behind this, as far as being the one thing that we can kind of group them into, like that's the ideology that they use to, do the attack. If they had used some kind of radical ideology about Ben and Jerry's, I'm pretty sure that we would be like, oh, those ice cream motherfuckers just went in there and killed everybody because they didn't get their ice cream or something, that's why I kind of lump them in there. And I know that people in the comment section are saying that radical Islam is equal to Islam, but I'm trying to make a distinction here in interpretations. Just like Christianity has interpretations, so does Islam. And Islam does have a radical version of it, just like Christianity has a radical version of it. It's just that here in America, we don't allow the radical Christians to really become violent anymore. There are some in the country that are being violent, but at the same time, we're seeking to stop that from happening, at least in our country. And now I'm fairly certain that they chose France, or like they're choosing France as a target because it's easy access, it's easy to get guns into the country, whether or not you're going through actual customs or if you're going through. If you're crossing the border by like skydiving in with a cache or a cache of guns on your back, I think that the radical views of Islam were a pretty substantial force behind the attack. But these people were prone to these terrorist attacks beforehand. They're just using that as an excuse, or they're using that as a shield. And so that's pretty much my thoughts on it. I mean, they're not going to stop until we eradicate them. I mean, that's exactly what needs to happen. I know Muscow earlier asked, how do we stop this kind of thing from happening? And see, the sad fact is that we can't. I mean, there's just no way that we're going to be able to account for every single little hole that they can get around. I mean, they could start bribing officials to get guns into the country, or bribing people in the country because they're like, I don't give a fuck. So there's not going to be a way, like a central single way that we can stop these people. But other than directly like eradicating ISIS as a group, so those are my thoughts.
What I think about it is, of course, it's difficult to deal with issues like this. It's very sad that this attack occurred. But the thing is, these attacks are happening. And what can you do to stop it? Well, I'll tell you what you can do to stop it. And it may seem silly, and it may seem like you don't have that much power. But one of the things that inspired me to be a vocal atheist is this exact thing that I'm about to tell you, is that there is power in your voice. And the voice is what is going to change and prevent these attacks from happening. We need more people being vocal. We need to change the system. What we don't need when things like this happen is prayer or my thoughts are with these people. In all situations, the proper way to resolve an issue is to take action. Silence gives consent. Your voice matters. It may seem as simple as doing a podcast, reaching a handful of people. But I'll tell you, being on social media, being a vocal atheist, I've changed a lot of people's minds on the topic. And there are people in your social circle who possibly could have these same radical ideas, maybe not Islam, but could be radical Christianity. And just from knowing you could change what that person's perspective is. So I think that the most important thing now, because the attack's already occurred, there's nothing that we can do about that. That's said and done. Is what do we do in response to these attacks? And what we do is we continue to fight against harmful religious ideology. And if you don't have a position of power or legislation that allows you to do that, then you use your voice, because vocal atheists or vocal secularists are what is going to change the world for the better and to rid the world of religion. And that's what we're fighting for. I don't care if you believe in a God. Theism, just like atheism alone, is not enough to motivate people to do this. You need religious dogma, you need religious doctrine, you need religious ideology in order to carry out things like this. And I think that the more we fight that, the more we're going to be able to change the world. So my message to you is to be vocal about it, and don't let things like this fade from the memory, because it's going to happen again. But we have to keep talking about it. We have to keep pressing the issue. What is it? This is the second large terrorist attack in Paris this year. It's going to happen again, okay? We need to accept this. And we need to accept it, and we need to move forward and be vocal about it. So that's my message. That's my thoughts on it.
Well, my thoughts now seem really lame. Thanks.
Well, Ayla's covered a lot of things that I didn't, but I'm glad that all three of us were able to get it out there. That people have an amalgam of different opinions that they can either agree with or disagree with, and then we can start that conversation. But now is Ayla's favorite time of the week.
It's time. It's time for my favorite segment of reason, Hypocrite of the Week! Man, I haven't done that in a while.
And somehow I didn't miss
it. All right, today's Hypocrite of the Week is former children pastor is charged with raping young girls. Now, I know that probably a lot of you are like, yeah, you got these every single week. But they are important to talk about and discuss. So, nanny boo-boo, stick your head in doo-doo. Jonesboro,
How old are you?
Yeah, exactly.
He has a son. It's acceptable.
Yeah.
Remember, GE is old enough and, I guess, of the mind to have children of his own.
Yeah.
Let's all have that sink in for a second.
Let's not discuss my age right now, okay? I'd rather not discuss my age. My gray hairs are showing through. Former pastor Tony Waller, a father of a 5-year-old girl, is accused of raping girls in his Jonesboro church. His mother, who did not want to be identified, can't believe her son is responsible. He's a wonderful son, and you would never have thought that would happen. Waller was living in Marion, Arkansas, with his mother after being fired from his job of 15 years at the church. Earlier in the week, Jonesboro police picked up Waller in Marion on a warrant. Blah. The victims told Jonesboro police Waller touched them inappropriately dozens of times. He repeatedly took them into a wooded area or other secluded places and took their clothes off of them before sexually molesting them. The girls were 10 and 11 at the time. Police said he also took secret videos of the young girls in bathrooms and showers. I was completely shocked, his mother said. I mean, he's always been a good man. Waller's mother found out when her son was arrested in May. In November, a judge ruled there was probable cause to charge Waller. Waller's wife of 14 years tipped off police when she found thousands of videos and photos of young girls on a computer. Waller's wife and mother both said he told them he has had an addiction to porn for 20 years. Let's clarify something, though. He doesn't have an addiction to porn. That's not what that... He has an addiction to child pornography, to illicit photos of underage children.
And molesting young girls.
Exactly. That is what he has an addiction to. And me personally, I know a lot of people, some people out there, I guess, don't like the fact that I acknowledge that these type of people need, like, mental help. You know, like, these type of people don't just need prison. I think that they really need some kind of psychological help in order to get them to recondition themselves to not be that way.
Right, and Pulse of Defiance says in the comment section, yeah, blame it on the porn. And I hate when shit like this happens and they blame it on the porn. Listen, motherfuckers, I watch porn every day, okay? Well, now it's going through my head because I'm getting ready to say it. But I've never thought about molesting a child. I would never think of that, and you can't derive that from porn, okay? I'm proof of that. I watch porn every day. I'm not out there raping people and molesting children, okay?
Yeah,
so
Alice is on his way to work, and he's like, oh, yeah, I got some time for some booty.
Hey man, sometimes I watch porn and I don't even, masturbate. I just watch porn if it's got a good story, That a
good story.
That good old B movie shit.
Man, this woman, she just called for a pizza, and I think he's gonna give it to her.
No, that's too simple. Like I saw this one where we're totally getting sidetracked here.
Why are we talking about this?
But hey, there was this one where like there was this guy, he was wrongfully accused of murder, and like his attorney like fell in love with him, and they had sex in the jail cell. It was like 30 minutes long, but the sex scene was like a minute and a half. So I was like, man, that was a great porn.
A minute and a half? Dang, I thought porn stars could last longer.
I was getting off on the story, man. I was done about 5 minutes in. Hey, Pulse of Defiance said hashtag they fucking.
That's your hashtag.
Oh, it's a thing now.
Yeah, but all right, let's get back into a serious zone here. So yes, you cannot blame this on the fact that you have a porn addiction for 20 years. And also, as a pastor, you are supposed to be the moral representation of your community. You're supposed to be the one that has it all together. The person who all these other people are looking to for moral consolation. And you're doing some of the most immoral acts possible. I mean, I think that's one of the worst possible things you can do is to molest children. And he's done it several times, according to this, dozens of times. He's had multiple victims. And so far, what we've seen just from this article is so short, but so far what we've seen from it is basically somewhat of, I guess, apologetics. I mean, he's blaming it on the porn. His mom saying he's always been a good man. You would have never thought that would happen. Okay, look, it did happen. Stop making excuses for it. He has an issue. He's a pedophile. He needs mental help. And let me clarify here, because we have to do this every single time. There's nothing wrong with a person who is a pedophile. A pedophile just has an attraction to children. And so long as they're not acting on it, that's not a problem. It's a mental disability at this point. That's how we've described it. And you need to seek mental help for it. But the problem is when you start acting on it, then what you are doing is becoming a detriment to society, and we need to punish you for that. I'm all for getting you help, but if you act on it, then it's time to punish you. And since you've got all these videos of girls in bathrooms and showers, let's also be clear here. Dieter probably can do a better presentation of this, but actually having child pornography is harming other people. It's not only contributing to child pornography and people that are pedophiles, but also the people that were harmed in the making of those videos and those different things. And also, these are real people. If you're a pedophile and you're watching pornography of a child, that's a real person. And it's being shared with millions of people. I mean, you know how porn is. It gets shared a lot. It goes viral. These people, you're actually hurting them as a person by putting this out there. So there's a lot of harm that comes from this. It's not just he was watching pornography. He had videos of these girls. They were probably members of his church, I'm pretty sure, who trusted this guy. Probably the parents of these kids trusted this guy. And instead of being the moral representative that he's supposed to be, he ended up being the sadistic, motherfucker that's out here raping children.
Dieter, thoughts?
I don't know really. I was about to say, I don't even know what I can add to that. It's yes, the mother says, "Oh, he was such a good man." No, he's not. And the fact that you don't want to be identified shows that you understand this as well. There is something deeply wrong with this gentleman. His religion certainly didn't help, nor did his position in that religion help. There was no support in his community. There's a mental health issue. Every possible thing that could drive this person to do this sort of thing apparently happened to him. And not making excuses, obviously, But the fact that he blames it on porn as opposed to his own issues tells me very strongly that he also understands that there's a serious problem, because he's just grasping at nothing at this point. I do hope that all the people that he has abused and all the people that, as Aola said, he has contributed to their suffering, I hope all of them can somehow get over this event that have happened to them. And I really hope this guy just can't hurt anybody else. And then obviously the final point is I wish we had a prison system that could somehow prevent this from happening again. But if this guy ever gets out of prison, I have no reason to think that he won't do it again.
Yeah. Well, I was going to point out a comment that Kim made in the comment section. She says, it comes from the base ideology that religion teaches that men are not expected to control themselves as women. The women are responsible for the actions and lusts of men. That actually is a one particular interpretation of the Bible, and the Bible does actually say that women are responsible for the sexual lust or sexual actions of men. And not of course not every denomination teaches that is fact or whatnot, but some of the more fundamentalist ones, they actually do. That's why you see Right Wing Watch or Raw Story putting up these videos of pastors that are standing there in the church and they say these things, and then you have the crowd clap their hands yeah, that's right, my daughter's responsible for you having a sexual fantasy about her while you're telling us about God's word.
A moral atheist brought up a point in the comment section. He said, do you think that pedophilia could be considered a sexual orientation? I think that it could be. I think that maybe something has gone wrong in the wiring of these people's brains that makes them attracted to children. And the reason why it's wrong is, we shouldn't have to say this, but it's because the children cannot consent. We have this idea that only adults can consent to sex. And so while being a pedophile, a person who is attracted to children, is not wrong, the statistics for pedophilia are such that it's likely that they will become or they will have a victim in the future. So the best course of action is to get them mental help. And the only way to do that is to destigmatize pedophilia. Okay, you're a pedophile. Okay, we're happy to know that you're seeking help. You come out, we'll help you in the best way that we can. But that's not the response that you get. And I think that was highlighted last year when there was a gentleman who came out and said that he was a pedophile and that he wanted to get help for this, and people were ostracizing him and marginalizing him when he hadn't did anything at all. We can't be that type of authoritarian that we're punishing people or stigmatizing people for thought crimes. He's attracted to children, okay, but we need to see what we can do to fix it. Until someone acts on it, I don't think that we can treat them any differently than anyone else. The number one goal for us is always, we've said this on the show before, is always to get help. We want you to get help. We don't want you to act on it. But, like this pastor, the moment that you act on it, now we have to punish you as well. We're still going to get you help, but you have to be punished for your crimes. Right, Dieter? I'm sure you say something along those lines.
Pretty much. I kind of changed the language a little bit because I see our prison system should be rehabilitation. So when I see somebody that commits something this terrible against someone, let alone against a child, I would say, as opposed to punishing them, I would be like, all right, you have forfeited your right to be around people. So now because you didn't seek help on your own, we're going to force it on you. But that's in my idealized future for the human race.
The other thing I see too is that, I don't know if you guys have noticed with some of these stories that we cover, but it seems like because we mostly cover pastors that do this, but it seems like they get a really light sentence. We covered a pastor a couple weeks ago who only got 2 years in prison, and then he was back out doing the same thing again. And from the research that we have on people who have sexually abused children is that it's a very high chance that if given the opportunity, they're going to do it again. I don't know where I actually stand on this. I probably need to revisit it and figure out what I actually think. But some of these sentences that the people are getting, I feel, are a little too light. I'm kind of with Dieter on this. You forfeited your right to be around people, especially if you've done it to multiple people. You've sexually abused or molested multiple children. You forfeited your right to be around children. Until you're properly rehabilitated and we can make that assessment that you have earned the right to be back around children again, it should be off limits for good for you.
That would be my opinion on all crimes. If my idealized future could become real, so it's like if you kill somebody, you're just like, okay, you can't be in public. It's either you have like horrific self-control, or your only idea of how to handle situations that you can't control is to lash out and kill somebody. Regardless, you're not allowed around people. But that is going to take a radical shift in how we see any crime whatsoever. Because right now, I don't know what is wrong with people, but there's like a knee-jerk reaction to go, oh, you committed a crime? Well, fuck you, you should die. Right now. And I want to do it to you. And it's like, I don't think you realize what you've just said, random hypothetical person. Because I don't think you could actually do that. I think it's just one of those situations where people just don't really think about the consequences of our legal system at all. People just like revenge. That was it. Start talking.
I mean, we've said over and over that we prefer to give people help. I mean, that's the thing. I would love, in the perfect world, we will have destigmatized pedophilia. But the truth is, we haven't even totally destigmatized mental illness yet. That's still
we haven't destigmatized being gay yet. So let's
true.
Baby steps.
I mean, it is only 2015. How long is this going to take? What is it going to be, 3015 before we've totally, accepted everything?
I completely sidestepped the question that was asked in the comments. I think by definition, literally by definition, pedophilia is a sexual orientation. But I think it would go in the same category as, the really aberrant fetishes that cause harm to people. So it's sure, it's an orientation, but that doesn't necessitate, protection of those actions under the law. Because this is among the large category of things, this is something that acting on it in any capacity will cause harm to other people and I guess to yourself because of jail. So yeah, I don't care how it's identified, other than how to treat it if it can be treated, or how to just deal with it if it can be dealt with. That's the only reason I could see identifying it as an orientation.
Well, yeah. And Pulse in the comments here says, I think the stigma sticks because we think about the harm to the children. And that's true. I think that is something that's really hard to get past. And to be quite honest,
but that's why on this show and a lot of other places, we try to make the distinction between child rapists and child molesters, as well as whatever you would call somebody that partakes in child porn. Right. Those are people that cause harm to people. Just having thoughts does not. And actually, I disagreed subtly with something that somebody said. There's a lot more than actually being sexually attracted to something to cause harm to that. So there are plenty of people that actually aren't attracted to kids that still do horrible things to kids.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, we have to make this distinction. And even though we make the distinction a lot, I mean, GE posted a post on his page not that long ago where he mentioned that someone was a pedophile. And, one of the commenters went on this long tangent about, how pedophilia is not actually child raping and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, we make this distinction, and we make this clear every single time we talk about one of these pastors doing this, is that we're not saying that
but to be
just
like
the
to be
simple
fair
pedophilia is bad.
To be fair to the public, I guess, like it's not like it's easy for us. Like I get a sour feeling in my stomach every time we talk about this.
Of course. I mean, it's just like he said. We're thinking about the harm that it causes to children. And once you have children, it's elevated to a new level, because then you think about if someone did it to your kids, you kind of put yourself in that person's shoes.
It's just freaking terrible.
We don't do this happily.
Why must we defend reason? Can I defend something that's to defend?
Hey, sometimes being reasonable, being logical is going to place us in positions that we don't really like. But that's the point, is that being reasonable and being logical is going to get us much farther than just having an emotional response to it. We got to give people a chance. I mean, there was a great example. I mentioned that guy who came out. I think they might have actually had him on BuzzFeed last year, but he came out and said that he was a pedophile and that he was sexually attracted to children and that he wanted to seek help. And immediately he was like shunned, stigmatized, marginalized, ostracized. Like they just hit him with everything. His whole family disowned him when he came out. And I get it that they're thinking about the harm to children, but he's trying to tell us that he has an issue and he wants to seek help. We have to be careful about how we apply that.
Yeah. I think I told this story before, but I think I told this the last time the subject came up, because it comes so fucking often in this freaking country. There was like an episode of Special Victims Unit, Law and Order, and it was this exact situation, except this was a teenager. It was like a teenager who found out that I think it was his younger cousin, and they didn't just immediately assume that the kid did something horrible. They went so far as to test the cousin to make sure whether or not he was raped. And I don't think I need to go into much detail on this, but it's unpleasant for the kid or for anybody to go through that sort of situation. And it was for nothing. Nothing ever happened. And the moral of the story was, because of or however you pronounce that version of that word, and just how everyone hated him and assumed he was evil already, he ended up committing the very crime he was going to get help to prevent, rather. So obviously it's a dramatized situation, but if you ostracize people for something that they're trying to get help for, be it like being a drug user or having some kind of if you're having psychopathic thinking patterns or something, if you go and get help for those things, people are just kind of like, holy shit, this is actually even admirable that you're coming to get help before you do something that you would regret. But for a lot of other crimes, that isn't how people see it. They see almost as just admitting it means you've already done something wrong.
And that's that vicious circle that we're in right now, is that they can admit it, because if they do, then they're going to be treated like they've already done it.
You know what's really crazy, though? I think this used to happen when people, actually it happens in some communities still, if you say that you're gay. You're just like, why would you tell me that? It's because it's true. I'm trying to be honest with you. And it's like, no, it must be this horrific, evil monster. It happens also when you're an atheist to some people. It's just it's almost like telling them something suddenly changes everything about them, and that now makes them evil because of a whole lot of preconceptions about the subject. Well, too bad, I guess, with any subject. So put everything in context, be skeptical, and help people who want to be helped, especially if they want to be helped. And that is my rant for the day.
So, for having a large collection of child pornography, some of which you took on your own, of secret videos of young girls in the bathrooms, and for sexually abusing and molesting multiple victims who were around the ages of 10 and 11, we're going to stamp you with hypocrite, of the week for your failure to be the moral representative that you were supposed to be in your community. And instead, you let everyone else down. Give it to him, Dieter. Oh, wait, you don't have your mallet.
Uh,
All right, that's good enough. Hypocrite of the week.
Yep, hypocrite of
That-
the week.
Glue gun inside. So that was out of a Folgers container, smacking it on top of a spool of 3D printing film.
Hey, you know, whatever works.
So yeah, this guy is an asshole. I hope he can't harm anyone else.
All right, let's go on and wrap this show up. I got to go get to some Fallout 4 real quick.
I was gonna do that. Because I have to go home now.
Yeah, I know, right? All right, well, let's go. Let me get to in the.
Are we gonna do like
podcast
final words?
No, I think we ripped this guy to shreds.
Not on this, just in general.
Everybody have a nice week. We'll be back on
All
here
right.
in a couple weeks, and y'all have a nice night.
Thanks for watching, and may reason forever outweigh religious stupidity.
I'm tired, and this video was stressful.